Welcome to Walking Tour of Italy, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in Italy with every episode. Each week, we'll travel to a different destination, from ancient ruins and stunning gardens to fascinating cities, historic landmarks, and hidden gems tucked away across this incredible country. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com, where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore Italy. You're standing at the edge of one of the most extraordinary public squares in all of Europe. Before you stretches Piazza Maggiore, the Great Square of Bologna, and if you arrived expecting something polished and tourist perfect, what you find instead is something far better. This place is alive. Students cut across the cobblestones with their bikes. Elderly men argue cheerfully under the medieval porticos. A street musician plays somewhere around the corner, and the smell of espresso drifts out from a nearby bar. This is not a museum piece, it never has been. This is the beating heart of one of Italy's most passionate, most intellectual, and most delicious cities, and it has been exactly that for over 800 years. Take a moment before you step in. You're at the outer edge of the square, and from here, the whole scene unfolds before you. The piazza is broad and open, roughly 115 meters long and 60 meters wide, paved in terracotta-colored brick that catches the light differently depending on the hour. The buildings enclosing it represent nearly every century of Bologna's civic ambition, stacked one against the next like chapters of the city's own story. And at the southern end, dominating everything, is the Basilica. Enormous, unfinished, and absolutely magnificent. We'll get there. But first, let's talk about how all of this came to be. Bologna was already a thriving city when its medieval leaders made a decision that would shape everything. In the early 1200s, the city's governing commune began buying up land here at the center of town, tearing down houses, demolishing towers that wealthy families had built as symbols of their power, and clearing the ground for something new. What they were building was more than just an open space. They were building an idea. The Plateau Communes, the common square, was meant to be the physical and symbolic center of the city, a place that belonged to everyone, where commerce and government and civic life would all converge. It became one of the very first squares built in medieval Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire, and it has never stopped serving that original purpose. Over the centuries, popes and emperors passed through this square. Laws were proclaimed here, carnivals spilled across these stones, religious processions wound their way through, and during the darkest chapter of the 20th century, this square was the site of liberation. On April 21, 1945, Allied forces entered Bologna and the city was freed from Nazi occupation. The moment left a mark you can still find today. Let's begin moving toward the center of the square. As you walk out onto the open cobblestones, notice the slightly raised platform in the middle of the piazza. The Bolognese call it Il Crescentone, which translates loosely as the big growth, and it was built in 1934 as a raised pedestrian platform. If you look carefully at its sides, you'll find scrapes and gouges in the stone. Those marks were left by an American armored tank on the day of liberation in 1945. No one repaired them. They were left exactly as they are, as a memorial. In a city that has seen centuries of history, this small, quiet scar is one of the most moving things you'll find in the whole square. Now turn and look toward the long arcade-fronted building along the northwest side of the square. This is the Palazzo dei Banchi, the Palace of the Stalls. It was built in the 16th century to give an orderly, elegant facade to what had been, for centuries, a rather chaotic collection of market stalls and merchant benches pressed up against the buildings. Behind this facade, the narrow alleyways of the old Quadrilatero market district begin. We'll visit those before the tour ends. Turn your attention now to the tall, rose-tinted building with the tower and the wide arched entryway. This is the Palazzo da Curzio, also called the Palazzo Comunale, or City Hall. It has been the seat of Bologna's city government since 1336, and it takes its older name from a remarkable man, a legal scholar named Accursius, who worked at the nearby University of Bologna, and whose commentary on Roman law became one of the foundational texts of legal education for centuries. Look above the main gateway and you'll see a bronze statue, a figure in papal robes, one hand raised in blessing over the square below. This is a portrait of a Bologna-born man who became one of the most consequential popes in history. He was born Ugo Boncompagni, and he became Gregory XIII, the man responsible for the calendar you use every single day. In 1582, it was Gregory who reformed the old Julian calendar, correcting its accumulated errors and establishing what we now call the Gregorian calendar. The leap year, the modern calculation of Easter, the alignment of the calendar with the solar year, all of this came from a man who once looked out over this very square. If you'd like to step inside the Palazzo de Curzio, the courtyard is open to visitors and worth a short detour. On the second floor, the Sala Farnese is a grand ceremonial hall with richly decorated frescoes, and from its windows you'll have one of the finest elevated views of the square. Move now toward the long arcaded building that anchors the northern edge of the square, the one with the tall tower rising from its center. This is the Palazzo del Podesta, the oldest of all the buildings ringing the square. Its origins go back to around 1200, making it a contemporary of the piazza itself. The Podesta was the chief magistrate of the medieval city, an appointed official, typically brought in from another town to avoid local political entanglements, who served as judge, administrator, and military commander. The tower at the center is called the Torre dell'Arengo, and it houses a great bell called the Campanazzo that was installed in 1435. When that bell rang, the people of Bologna knew something extraordinary was happening. A call to arms, an emergency, an announcement of momentous civic news. Stand beneath it now and imagine the sound rolling out over a medieval city. There is something else worth knowing about the covered passageway running through the ground floor of this building. The Voltone del Podesta. It has a remarkable acoustic property. If you stand in one of its four corners and whisper against the wall, your voice travels around the curve of the vault and can be heard clearly in the opposite corner. Locals say that conspirators would meet in the four corners of the vault to exchange secrets without being overheard by anyone standing in the middle. Whether true or not, the acoustic effect is real. Try it if you have a companion with you. Now walk toward the center of the piazza where it meets the smaller, adjoining square to the north, the Piazza del Nettuno. The boundary between the two is seamless. You'll cross from one to the other without quite noticing. And there, rising out of the fountain basin, you'll see him, the god of the sea, arms outstretched, trident in hand, water cascading around him. This is the Fountain of Neptune, and it has been here since 1566. The city commissioned a Flemish sculptor, a man who would become known in Italy simply as Giambologna, to create something that would express the power and ambition of a prosperous city under papal governance. What he produced was a bronze masterwork, a towering figure more than 3 meters tall that the Bolognese quickly nicknamed Il Gigante, the giant. The statue caused something of an uproar when it was unveiled. The cardinal overseeing the commission found the nudity and the powerful, expressive pose a bit much for a very public square in a very Catholic city. Legend holds that when Giambologna came to ask approval for the full design, he brought 2 versions, one modest, one magnificent, and laid them before the cardinal. The cardinal reportedly pointed to the bolder one without hesitation and said something along the lines of, "For Bologna, this one." Whether the story is entirely accurate, it captures something true about this city spirit. Bologna has always had a talent for combining its religious devotion with a very earthly appetite for beauty. Look at the base of the fountain carefully. The surrounding figures, 4 women at the corners pressing their arms to release streams of water, were considered scandalous enough that the sculptor reportedly gave them a slightly more demure expression than originally planned. The Bolognese characteristically found this delightful. Even today, the fountain is one of the great gathering points of the city. Young people sit on its steps in the evenings, the sound of water constant beneath the hum of conversation. Now it's time to turn and face the building that has been quietly dominating everything since you arrived, the Basilica of San Petronio. Walk toward it across the square, and as you approach, keep your eyes on the facade. This is one of the strangest and most compelling sights in all of Italian architecture. The lower portion of the facade, roughly the first third, is faced in beautiful pink and white marble carved with exquisite detail. 3 great portal doorways are set into it, framed in marble reliefs. The central portal in particular is extraordinary. Its carved panels along the sides were created in the early 15th century by a Sienese sculptor. and they depict stories from the Old and New Testaments with a grace and expressiveness that still feel remarkably modern. Look at the figures closely. Look at how they move. Now raise your eyes above the marble belt and stop. That's it. That's where it ends. The upper two-thirds of the facade is raw, unfinished brick. No marble, no carving, no completion. Just the exposed skeleton of a church that was begun in 1390 and never finished. This is the most famous unfinished facade in Italy, and the story of why it remains this way says something profound about the politics of power in Renaissance Europe. When Bologna's city council commissioned this basilica in 1390, they had a vision. They wanted the largest church in Christendom. They wanted something that would dwarf St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, that would announce to all of Europe that Bologna, seat of the world's first university, prosperous trading city, proud and independent republic, was a power to be reckoned with. The city did not even ask the Pope's permission before laying the first stone. Construction was proceeding magnificently when the papacy stepped in and effectively shut down the plan. There are various accounts of exactly how it happened, but the result was clear. The church would not exceed certain dimensions, and funds were diverted elsewhere. The marble cladding stopped. The church was never completed, and there it stands today, half-dressed and somehow all the more powerful for it. Go inside now. The interior will take your breath away in a different way than you expect. It's vast. This is one of the largest churches in the world, the sixth largest Catholic church ever built, 132 meters long and 66 meters wide, with a nave that soars to nearly 45 meters. And yet the Gothic severity of it, the austerity of the stone, and the minimal decoration of the upper walls gives it a quality that feels more like a great cathedral than an overly decorated showpiece. There is space here to think. Along the left aisle, find the small chapels and look for the Bolognini Chapel, the fourth on the left. Step inside and let your eyes adjust. The walls of this chapel are covered in 15th century frescoes by an artist known as Giovanni da Modena, depicting scenes of heaven and hell in vivid, almost alarming detail. The hell scene in particular is extraordinary, a graphic vision of damnation full of demons and torments that includes among the damned a figure that has caused centuries of controversy. This fresco has been the subject of threatened attacks and has given rise to significant security measures around the basilica. It's one of the most debated works of art in Bologna, and one of the most quietly powerful. Now walk further into the nave and look down at the floor of the left aisle. Running diagonally across the stone, a long precise line of brass inlaid into the floor is something that looks at first like a simple decoration. It is not. This is the Cassini meridian line, built in 1655 by the astronomer Giovanni Cassini, a scientist who would later become famous for discovering 4 of Saturn's moons and the great gap in Saturn's rings that still bears his name. The meridian line stretches 67 meters from one end of the nave to the other, making it the longest indoor sundial in the world. Here is how it works. High in the vault of the left aisle, there is a small hole, almost invisible from below. Each day, around midday, a beam of sunlight passes through that hole and falls onto the floor. The exact position where the beam lands on the meridian line tells you the date and the season with extraordinary precision. When Cassini built this instrument, it was not merely a curiosity, it was a scientific tool that helped identify errors in the Julian calendar, contributed to the reform that Gregory XIII had initiated less than a century earlier, and refined our understanding of Earth's relationship to the sun. The next time midday approaches during your visit, pause and watch the floor. If the sun is out, you may see the light arrive. The basilica also houses what is considered the oldest pipe organ still in use in the world. Built around 1470 by Lorenzo da Prato, it still functions and is played during services. There is a bell in the tower outside known as La Scolara, the schoolgirl, which once rang to mark the beginning of university lectures at the nearby Arciginnasio. Bologna has always found ways to weave education into the very fabric of its civic life. When you step back outside and blink in the afternoon light, take a moment to stand on the steps of the basilica and look out across the square from here. This is the angle the artists always loved, the one where you can take in the full sweep of the piazza with the fountain and palaces all at once. If you happen to be here in summer, this square transforms into one of the largest open-air cinemas in Italy, with thousands of chairs arranged across the crescentone and films projected against the evening sky. A very Bolognese thing to do. Now, let's leave the piazza and explore what lies just beyond it, because the streets that radiate outward from here are some of the finest walking in the city. Head eastward from the square toward the narrow alleyways of the Quadrilatero district. This medieval market quarter has been selling food since the Middle Ages, and it still does, with an intensity that can feel almost overwhelming in the best possible way. The streets are called things like Via del Pescieri Vecchie, the street of the old fishmongers, and Via Caprachi, the street of the goat sellers. The names are medieval, but the activity continues. One street that is absolutely worth finding is Via Caprari, where you'll discover Tamburini, a legendary Bolognese deli that has been here in one form or another since the mid-1800s. The current family has been running it since 1932. Step inside and you'll find cured meats hanging from the ceiling, wheels of Parmigiano stacked to the rafters, fresh pasta in every shape Bologna has ever invented, and a self-service lunch counter where you can eat like a local for a very modest price. Order a board of mortadella, Bologna's great gift to the world of cured meat, and a glass of local wine, and find a table if you can. This is lunch done the Bolognese way. To find it from the piazza, head east through the porticos along the southern side, turn into the narrow streets of the Quadrilatero, and look for it on Via Capraria. From there, continue east through the alleyways. You'll emerge eventually onto streets that lead toward the Due Torri, the two towers, two medieval leaning towers built by rival noble families in the 12th century as symbols of wealth and military readiness. The taller one, the Torre degli Asinelli, stands 97 meters high, and you can climb its 498 steps for what many consider the best view in Bologna. It is a climb and a steep one, and it is worth every step. Go in the morning when the light is clearer and the crowds are smaller. For dinner, make your way to the University Quarter, just north and east of the square. A short walk from the piazza brings you to Osteria dell'Orsa, one of the most beloved traditional restaurants in the city. It has been feeding students and locals since the late 1970s and operates on the classic osteria model. Communal tables, a short menu that changes daily, no reservations, and a room that is always loud and warm and entirely unpretentious. Arrive at opening time if you can, or be prepared to wait, and order the tagliatelle al ragù. This is the dish Bologna invented, and here it is exactly as it should be. A slow-cooked meat sauce that clings to the wide ribbons of fresh egg pasta in a way that no plate of spaghetti ever could. To reach it from the piazza, walk north along Via dell'Indipendenza for a few minutes, then turn right into the University Quarter and follow the sound of people enjoying themselves. Before you leave the area of the piazza entirely, there is one more thing worth seeing. Head south from the Basilica for a very short distance and you'll find the Archiginesio, the first permanent building of the University of Bologna, constructed in the 1560s. The University of Bologna is the oldest university in the world, founded in 1088, and the Archiginesio was its first dedicated home after centuries of lectures held in various churches and private buildings. Today, it is a public library with one of the great collections of Europe. What makes it extraordinary is the interior courtyard and the walls. Every surface is covered in the coats of arms and inscriptions of the thousands of students who studied here over centuries. A layered archive of intellectual ambition and cultural memory. Walk through the courtyards and you'll feel it. Inside the Archiginesio, there is also the Teatro Anatomico, the anatomy theater. This wood-paneled room, built in 1637, was the lecture theater where Bologna's medical students watched human dissections performed by their professors, surrounded by carved wooden figures of anatomists and watched over by two reclining flayed figures that are among the most arresting pieces of decorative sculpture you'll ever encounter. The theater was damaged during World War II and painstakingly restored. It is open to visitors and absolutely not to be missed. Now come back to the square for the last time, find a place to sit, on the steps of the Basilica or on the rim of the fountain, or simply on the stone edge of the Crescentone. Let the square do what it has always done. Watch the people, listen to the water. Notice how the light changes on the facade of the Basilica as the afternoon moves toward evening. The marble glows, the brick softens, the whole building transforms. The people of Bologna say that their city is best understood at this hour, in this light, in this square. They are right. Piazza Maggiore has been the center of this city's life for 8 centuries. Empires have tried to control it, wars have passed through it, popes and kings have made their entrances and their exits. Students have debated the nature of the universe in the streets just beyond its edges. tortellini have been perfected in the kitchens nearby. And through all of it, the people of Bologna have kept coming back to this square, have kept making it theirs, have kept filling it with the noise and warmth and argument and laughter that define this city. You are part of that continuity now, even if only for an afternoon. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things. Subscribe so you never miss a destination, leave us a positive review to help others find the show, and share this episode with someone who loves exploring Italy. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond Italy, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next walk.